Siddharth, how are we looking at the whole tariff announcement this morning? A 26% opposed to a 52% that India levies, but exemptions that have come in. Tell us more about that, because I'm curious. Has the Modi friendship, have all the negotiations led to any tariff that we feel we deserve?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question. So
Yes.
let me take it in two parts. First, what do these tariffs mean for certain sectors? The big headline really at this stage, and for India, where we have a significant export to the United States of pharmaceuticals of around $15 billion, there will be no tariffs on the pharmaceuticals products from all over the world. India stands to be a beneficiary. Remember, we are called the pharmacy of the world with low-cost generic medicine. So that has not been impacted, and that's clearly a relief of sorts. The second part, the other product categories that we have spoken about, that were just being spoken about in terms of exemptions, that is because they are critical to the U.S. economy, semiconductors, copper, and energy and allied items. This is clearly some method in the madness that we can decipher, because the negative impact of these tariffs on the U.S. economy, on U.S. inflation, will be substantial, according to experts. But this is basically an attempt to stave off some of that impact. The
Do you
other
think,
point
Siddharth,
which I
yes. Do you think the markets are going to respond possibly favorable when we are talking about the pharma sector, the semiconductor? There's a full-on India semiconductor mission investment plan that India has. We've been pushing our semiconductor industry. Do you think this is something that may perhaps show on the positive for our country?
The real positive for India is that relative to other countries, remember, our competition in the global export market is not with the China or with the European Union. Our products compete with countries like Bangladesh or Vietnam, for example, and they have been hit with far higher tariffs. So our relative position as an export nation to the United States has been enhanced in some ways. That is a second round impact of this order. That was not the intent, clearly, but we stand to be a beneficiary vis-a-vis this. On some of the product categories, on semiconductors, for example, we still don't have a manufacturing base. Really, it is many years in the making and will take several years to take off. But there are multiple commodities on which we have a fairly decent global export share, and pharmaceuticals being just one example. And therefore, I believe our market reaction, and the markets will open in just a bit from now, will take into account the fine print. The global reaction, including the reaction in the U.S. market, remember this announcement came after U.S. markets had closed, has been substantially negative, because the big headline is that for the short term, the U.S. economy will face a lot of pain.
Bangladesh, like you were mentioning, will now be levied 37%. Sri Lanka gets about 44%, and they were also levying a much higher charge. So that's the tariff that will be imposed on these neighbor nations. Tell me this, Siddharth, do you believe that the association with Prime Minister Modi, and he mentioned it, Donald Trump taking a moment out from the whole chart optics, mentioned that Prime Minister Modi is a friend, India has been friend, but they've not treated the USA right when it comes to tariff. Do you believe that in some way this sort of bonhomie has resulted in Donald Trump levying 26%, could have been higher?
Well, it's very clear in the run-up to this, and this process has been underway for several months. India has been among the few major economies in the world that has not only extended a hand of friendship to the United States on the matter, but has demonstrated clear willingness to engage with the United States. There's been a meeting at the level of the principals of the two nations. We have had commerce ministers meeting. We had a very large, powerful delegation from the United States just this last week, spending 4 to 5 days in the national capital. What is going to happen? It is very clear that this tariff announcement will further spur efforts from the Indian side and obviously from the United States side for a bilateral investment treaty. That is going to get a further impetus, because clearly for the government of India, a substantial part of our exports go to the United States, somewhere around $88 billion and more. We want to protect that. And
Siddharth, I
therefore,
want you to elaborate on that because, and that would be my final question, that we've been talking about imports and how it would impact India, but I'm also very curious to see how the export industry works. In many ways, it's all interconnected, isn't it?
absolutely. And to your earlier point, it's very clear that Modinomics and Modi diplomacy has demonstrated extreme flexibility. For the past 10, 11 years, India has followed a policy of making India through import substitution. Let's take laptops as just one example. We decided to restrict imports of laptops in order to spur local manufacturing, local assembly of laptops. Now that has had to change, and I must say that within the last 3-4 months, we have seen a marked change in India's approach to global trade engagement. We currently have half a dozen and more conversations for treaties, bilateral trade treaties, including with the United Kingdom, the United States, Europe. Just this other day, Chile was here. So practically anybody who has a significant interest in the global economy is talking to India, and India has reciprocated. This is markedly different from our strategy that we have seen previously. So the flexibility in response, and to your question on Modi diplomacy, absolutely, I think that's been a clear standout. The personal chemistry has helped us, perhaps escape far more severe consequences. One quick final point. There is a fundamental issue with the way U.S. tariffs have been calculated. That chart, viral chart that President Trump showed, it clubs tariffs with non-tariffs. It also includes GST and value-added tax.
Okay.
And many economists are wondering how did this math happen. Perhaps this is some American system of mathematics that the nation which invented the zero still has to grapple with that.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Siddharth Zarabi telling us all about that announcement, the perspective and the repercussions of it world over. Thank you very much, Siddharth.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.